I too.
Hello, hello. Hey, thanks for dropping in. This is Aeriol with Healing Body, Mind, and Soul. And today I have the honor and privilege to interview Dr. Mike. And I'm very, very excited to hear about Dr. Mike, who is a chiropractor. I'll let him tell you all about it as usual. But I'm sure that you're going to want to hear everything that he has to share on the topic of healing yourself and holistic healing in general. Dr. Mike, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Aeriol. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah. So I would love to hear, can you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you're up to?
Okay, my name is Dr. Michael Evangel, and I'm a chiropractic physician in New Jersey. I've been in practice for 34 years. Before I was a chiropractor, I was a science teacher. I taught all sciences from K through 12, but actually I taught 7 through 12. I have my certification for K through 12. I taught life science, earth science, environmental studies. I also have a master's degree in environmental health. I taught physics, biology, and I really got into ecology at a very young age. And that's why I started to get into environmental health, because I wanted to be an environmental sleuth and actually catch these big corporations dumping things into the waterways, into the air. But then after as a school teacher, I was making back then $16,000 a year with a master's degree. I could have got a job with the state of New Jersey at $12,000 a year. So that wasn't a very good career move. So then I was interested in chiropractic because I was in a car accident when I was a teenager, 19 years of age. I was rear-ended by a drunk driver who was going about 35 miles an hour faster than me.
Oh my gosh.
My chest hit the steering wheel. It snapped the steering wheel off the steering column.
And your neck. Oh.
I got a whiplash injury. My knee hit the dashboard and popped my hip out of joint for a split second. And I went to medical doctors, and then a friend of mine who actually was into a lot of holistic things, he referred me to a chiropractor. And I went to the chiropractor. I thought they were quacks, witch doctors, and
a lot of people do.
A lot of people do. And actually the AMA had it in their guidelines not to associate with chiropractors until the 1980s. There was a famous antitrust lawsuit. Chester Wilkes sued the AMA and won. It wasn't until 1990 that the third attempt at the Supreme Court failed, and that they had to have a cease and desist letter to all the medical doctors in the country that was no longer bad to associate with chiropractors, and they actually got them on the RICO Act because it was racketeering. It was a landmark case. As a matter of fact, my attorney was the lead attorney for that case, Jim Turner, who's my FDA compliance attorney. Wow. But as I say, that's a story for another day.
That's amazing.
He was one of Ralph Nader's raiders too. And if people are old enough to know who Ralph Nader is, he's still alive. He ran for president a couple of times, and Jim worked with Ralph. He had a book called Unsafe at Any Speed about the Chevrolet Corvair. He was one of the first, if not the first, consumer advocate, Ralph Nader. And then later on, they got.
I remember the Corvair. The Corvair.
Unsafe at Any Speed was the name of the book. And then many people don't know, Ralph was a chef in the Army. And he said to Jim one day, to Jim Turner, what should we go after next? Who should we go after next? And so they decided to go after something in the food industry, and they successfully got cyclamates off the market. Cyclamate, people that are also old enough, because I'm pretty old, I'm 65. I used to tell my students, I taught science last year. I got out of retirement to teach science at Bill Parisi's Parisi Prep Academy in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. And I told the kids I got one foot in the grave and the other one on a banana peel, I told them. So that, I'm old as dirt. Actually, I had them do planks. If people know what planks are, exercise the plank.
Yes.
And I had them do planks. I said, if you can do plank longer than the old man, you can get 10 points on your final grade. And they were all drooling because at 15 years old, And so after 5 minutes, they all dropped. So I said to them, you guys are pathetic. And they said, Dr. Mike, why are we pathetic? And I said, because you dropped. He said, well, you didn't even look like you're tired. I said, well, I wasn't. How long can you go? I told him about a half an hour at least. It might be an hour, but you might have to call an ambulance if I do it for an hour. And then I told him, the reason why you're pathetic, the difference between you and me, and I always would try to teach my martial arts students and my chiropractic patients life lessons. It's very important to learn life lessons, not just, the everyday type of information, but lessons of life. And the lesson for that day is that I said, you're pathetic because you quit when your mind gives up. I quit when my body fails. Until you can push your body to the point of failure, you will always be pathetic, I told them. And they laughed and they went home and told the parents, and the parents were thanking me for sharing that with their kids because, these are things that they don't learn in school. And, lessons like whatever you do in life, do the utmost of your ability, focus 100% on what you do because, you have to live in the moment, things like that. So anyway, back to my chiropractic experience. I went to a chiropractor and it was quite interesting because I got results from the first adjustment and I was hooked right away. And I really felt competing in martial arts, it gave me an advantage over the field because I was really working to the best of my functional ability. And that's what Eastern medicine and Western medicine have really different from each other, is that
for sure.
Western medicine is the pill for the ill. And it's, if you don't have a symptom, you don't have a problem. But, the kidneys can be functioning at less than 25% functional capacity and you feel fine. But it's subclinical. And that's the thing that people really should take away from today. One of the greatest lessons to learn is that just because you're feeling fine doesn't mean you're okay, because there's a big difference between not being sick and being healthy.
Well, I hope that if our listeners are very self-aware, and I think that's part of it, that if you have to be, before your kidneys get to the point of getting at 7 or 25%, and you're walking around like that, you should be in tune with what your body is telling you. And I'm super impressed that you can do a plank for a half an hour.
Probably longer.
That's really amazing. I could never do that. Well, I shouldn't say that because that's poor languaging. I'm sure that if I invested,
worked up to it.
Yes, if I worked up to it, I'm sure that I could do it. Because I'm very strong in other ways, right? Even if I can't
mental
play.
Strength is the most important, because I really believe if you put your mind to something, and if somebody has done it sometime in the history of humanity, it's possible. I very rarely say anything's impossible. Improbable is about how far I go, but impossible is really kind of a word I don't like to use, because I've got two halves of me. One half is the scientist, which believes everything should be documented, and the other half is the martial artist, which believes there's a lot of things out there that can't be explained. And for example, just on a tangent, are you familiar with Dr. Duncan McDougall in Haverhill, Massachusetts in 1907, The Weight of the Soul, the 21 grams of mass?
Yes, I am familiar with that.
Well, it's interesting because in 1905, Einstein came up with E equals MC squared. That he said that, mass is the frozen state of energy, and that equation is energy in joules is equal to mass in kilograms times the speed of light in meters per second squared. So the bottom line is that I did the calculations at lunch one time because I had nothing better to do.
Because that's what you do.
I'm being facetious because I wanted to. But approximately 1 gram of mass was released in the first generation atomic bombs.
Whoa.
So if we comprehend that 21 grams of mass is released upon death, it's a tremendous amount of energy. Tremendous. And that is the best documentation that there is a soul, scientific documentation.
Wow. And that's kind of like dark matter, right?
Well, dark matter
was telling
and dark
me
energy, that's a whole other thing. And Dark matter and dark energy constitute approximately 94% of the mass of the universe. We have absolutely no idea what it is. Elemental, objects, about 6% of the mass of the universe. But we're learning a lot more about dark matter and dark energy. And also, Einstein predicted over 100 years ago gravitational waves. And then in 2016, they were identified. Because as you approach the speed of light, time slows down and, mass becomes heavier. So I told the science students last year that, if we're at 99.999 to go like 6/9% the speed of light, one day on the spaceship is over 10,000 years on Earth. So the amazing thing is that if we think about, time travel, I think that going forward in time, the only way we do it is to go fast. And I don't think we can go back in time because I do believe we've been visited by thieves from the future, like the movie Time Cop with Jean-Claude Van Damme. And
I don't know if I've seen that one.
Oh, that's an interesting movie, interesting concept. They send back the time cops to stop the thieves from stealing things and disrupting the space-time continuum. So, which is another thing you might have heard Back to the Future. They talk a lot about the space-time continuum. But
so wait, can you stop for 1 second, rewind. Right. So you believe that you can go to a different timeline or peek into a different timeline, or time travel, if you will, but not go back? Is that because
yes? Well, you're not really time traveling.
Density. Is that because the density?
Well, if you're approaching the speed of light, time on Earth slows down. As a matter of fact, when they put the GPS satellites up, the GPS was drifting a couple feet a day because at that height away from the surface of the Earth and the speed is traveling at, less gravity and greater speed, time goes by at a slower rate up there. But it's so infinitesimally small, but it would, change slightly the GPS. But anyway, back to chiropractic and healing, because that's what we're really supposed to be talking about. Although we are, like I said, I'll talk about. We never know where the conversation will lead.
You're amazing. Oh my God.
But one more thing about a documentary movie I want to make. So anybody out there wants to do this with me, and if you steal my idea, I will sue you. But I'll get Jim Turner to go.
Heard it here first.
I've actually put it on Facebook a couple of times, but this is the first time actually on a podcast, that I want to do a documentary movie to recreate McDougall's experiment. And then I want to get a woman who wants to get pregnant and have her do, what you have to do to get pregnant. By the way, sperm counts down about 50% in the last 50 years. And about in another 50 years, we might not have to worry about birth control because the only babies might be test tube babies. But again, that's a story for another day.
What?
I got a whole program on this because basically what I do on my TV show, which is called The Super Mike Show, America's Holistic Hero, which is going to be premiering later on this month on Streaming Health TV on Roku. But I look at it like a military operation, that what we have to do is have to look at everything we're exposed to and see the things that are trying to kill us. Like I was mentioning before we started about Dr. Ted Koren's book, Cancer is Natural, So is the Cure. Nothing happens in the human body by accident. Everything has a purpose. There are no errors. There are no mistakes. And what's the purpose of cancer? Very simple. Tumors sequester toxins. Tumors are actually a survival mechanism in the human body to sequester toxins. And when you detox, the tumors shrink. I had a patient yesterday that actually had her spleen removed because I did a workup. Nobody could figure out what was wrong. And her family lives in West Milford, New Jersey. And I did a hair analysis because I also do something else, which could be a topic for another show, called Science-Based Nutrition. With Dr. Van Merkel, he's out in Ohio. So we do hair, urine, and blood. And we see what's off. Because, for example, if the lab test is supposed to be between 100 and 200, if you're 199, is that good? Wrong. If you're 101, is that good? I don't think so. I say center cut, 125 to 175. You want to be in the center 50%. because then you're in the Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold, that's just the right if you're Italian. I'm not sure if that's politically correct, but I'm part Italian anyway, so I can say that because I had my DNA done on Ancestry.com.
You did.
And I do have a little Jew in me too, so I do stand up too. My Jewish DNA.
Oh my gosh, I'm
my
sure
agent
you'll
is
get
Jewish.
some response.
He's probably cringy now that I'm saying it, but just like Howard Stern was Jewish and Italian, so he could talk about both. But anyway, mostly Greek and Italian with a little Jewishness thrown in there.
Okay, so there's a couple things. Couple things.
Reel it back in.
Reel it back in.
Okay, so anyway,
wow.
when women wants to get pregnant, if we
yeah,
can,
what is that about?
If we can weigh when the soul enters the body, is my theory, is upon fertilization or implantation to the uterus. If there's a 21-gram instantaneous increase in weight, that will document the soul entering the body.
I see.
And that will win an Academy Award in documentaries.
Okay, wait, I want to back up because I want to make sure I understand the concept. So you are saying and asserting, you're not asking women who want to get pregnant, women who you want to measure women that want to get pregnant. Is that correct?
Well, get a woman who's fertile, you can take the body temperature and see when they're fertile. But now they're saying that even a fertile woman, if she has sex, that it's only going to be 25% chance to get pregnant at that time.
Okay, so you want to wait. Let me make sure I understand. So you want to run a study of women who would like to volunteer to be studied. Where are you at?
Well, to put them in a room with a sensitive scale after they have sex. To see.
Got it. So then you want to measure. You want to measure to see if that is the time of fertilization
or implantation, or about there.
Implantation, or
right.
That's an interesting study. Do you know?
Well, that's my idea.
I had an expert on who was saying that that they have seen that the soul enters the body, or I don't know. This is an interesting subject. This is like a bigger subject than I feel like I have any. But he was saying that they measure when the soul comes into the body when the fingerprints are imprinted on the body, and he says. I don't know where he get. I have to go look back at that
to
podcast.
Find out where they got that information from.
He kind of blew my mind with that information. But he says that happens around 4 months, or they can measure the fingerprints at 4 months. Do you know about that?
I never heard that before. I want to see where they came up with that idea. Just like the idea nobody seems to know where it came up with for take your body weight divided by 2, and that's the number of ounces of water you should drink a day. I'm sure you've heard that before, but nobody seems to know where it came from.
But nobody knows where it came from.
Where it came from. It's very arbitrary. But I don't agree with that. And, it's America. Everybody's entitled to the wrong opinion. So we can.
I'm just the interviewer. I'm just telling you what somebody said on a previous podcast.
Now, Dr. Chen, who I know, who is actually going to be, well, he's a doctor. He's a PhD, but he's into Qigong and a lot of Chinese medicine. He told me that the soul enters and leaves the body several times during pregnancy before it decides it wants to stay. That's what he told me.
Whoa.
And he also says...
What about walk-ins? I've heard a lot of people in the New Age talk about walk-ins and things like that. That is like a revolving door of souls, right? I don't know what that's about.
The whole concept of reincarnation goes along more with science, because even though Christianity is the minority of the world's religions, because if there's a whole bunch of souls waiting to get born, a whole bunch of souls on earth, a whole bunch of souls are passed on, everything in nature is cyclical. The nitrogen cycle, the water cycle, the carbon cycle.
Yes,
everything's in cycles. But it blows my mind to think that I'm learning so much in this life, and if it could be like a hard drive wiped clean, although they say we retain memories. And Frank, the guy that referred me to the first chiropractor I went to when I was a teenager, he did past life readings. And he told me that actually I was the warlord to the Emperor of China in that life. He said, that's why I'm so military in my thinking.
You are quite abrupt, yes.
But because I work with police defensive tactics too, I teach that. That's why Eric came up with Super Mike, because I was kind of embarrassed, but by coincidence, which Ted Koren says in Hebrew, there's no word for coincidence because everything's ordained by God. That Superman was my favorite TV show growing up as a child. But I teach police defensive tactics. I teach psychology of confrontation, which is something that I thought we were going to be talking a little bit about conflict resolution today for some reason. That's what I was told.
One of our other guests, I've had some people on here talk about energy defense and self-defense. I would love to hear your opinion about that, Dr. Mike.
Okay, because like Obi-Wan Kenobi, you will let me pass. Star Wars is very interesting because it's very spiritual, just the whole concept of the dark side of the Force. And when I was a youth group counselor in my 20s, these kids, we went on a religious retreat and they tried to smuggle booze into, the suitcases. It's like,
the rebellious
done that. It's like not smuggling booze though, but I've got the ability to put myself into the criminal mindset. I do have a couple criminals in my past as far as my going way back generations. I also had a ancestor that was a general in Napoleon's army, allegedly. So anyway, I caught them. So the priest says to them, and this is something right out of Star Wars, and I wrote it down. It went right over their heads. It said, evil does not come in the form of fire and brimstone and the devil with horns. Evil comes in the form of the most beautiful woman or the prettiest song. You are not seduced, you're not overpowered by evil, you are seduced by evil. That's what he said. And I wrote it down right afterwards and I memorized it. And that's very profound because a lot of people, it's like with Darth Vader in Star Wars, he was seduced by the dark side of the Force. He wasn't thinking clearly.
Okay.
And, I always say, I would teach my martial arts students, I always say that, and I would debate with one of my patients who basically, he's a born again Christian. He tells me, well, man is basically evil. I said to him, no, man is basically good and man is basically evil. We have inside of us both. And the most righteous person in the world has done at least one horrible thing in their life. And the most hideous person in the world has done at least one noble thing in life. And as the Native Americans say, it depends which wolf you feed.
Right.
Like with Jiminy Cricket,
Okay.
got both on the shoulder.
We have different ways of explaining things, but I'm following you.
Yeah, a lot of times you come up with analogies, and
Yeah.
I have a whole thing about bone density and serotonin production too, with a bathtub full of water. But again, that's a story for another day. There are a lot of stories from the day. Maybe I'll be back some other time. I'm glad I can make you laugh.
Yeah. Okay.
Laughter is so therapeutic too, because the average toddler laughs so many times a day. The average adult, some adults don't even laugh once a day. And unfortunately, some adults laugh at other people's misfortunes. That's what they laugh at.
Dr. Mike, I have really taken on the practice of breathing and also laughing. Have you heard of laughter yoga?
After yoga?
Laughter yoga.
Oh, laughter, yes.
Yeah, I love that. It's so
laughter
funny.
yoga, yes.
What a funny practice.
Yep, you can put hot yoga together with laughter yoga. You can have hot laughs.
Yeah, and you can do stand-up, Dr. Mike.
I can. And also, what I do, because I teach psychology confrontation, like I said, and I'm kind of like Bruce Lee in certain ways because I take whatever works, because Bruce Lee would take whatever would work and incorporate into what he did. And that's what I do with martial arts. And that's what I also do with my practice. I look at whatever works. And
so you're an alchemist.
An alchemist?
Yeah.
Well, it mixed a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But eclectic style. But it's everything but nothing, together.
Yeah.
But what I really believe to do is, take bits and pieces of things. For example, there was something called the ARC triangle. You ever heard of that? It came from L. Ron Hubbard. It came from Scientology. Now, my opinion of L. Ron Hubbard, we won't get into today, because the Scientologists tried to recruit me in 1986. They were not successful. But one thing that was genius from Scientology, ARC, it's also a very good takeaway today, that A stands for affinity, and your desire to occupy the same place at the same time with somebody. R is reality, defined as agreement. And C is communication, taking a parcel of information, having it understood as it was intended to be. And I teach police, and this also is for any interpersonal relationship, whether there's a parent-child, male-female, coworker, whatever, or a policeman with somebody they're approaching, is that when it forms a triangle, one point goes up, like we like each other, we have better communication. A point goes down, we are not communicating well, you're not going to like me. So what you try to do is you work off the AIC triangle. For example, if I went to a domestic violence situation and the husband beat the wife, instead of saying to him, "What's the matter with you? You're not a real man hitting a woman," which is very adversarial, which some police do, which is not good. I would say, if I was a policeman, Mr. Jones, obviously your wife got you so upset you felt the need to hit her. What did she do so I can understand? She didn't have my food on the table in time, is the response. And my response is, I hear you. All I said is, I hear you. I didn't say I agree with you, but this guy now says, hey, he hears me. So he's starting to like me a little bit better. So you try to work on that. That's just an example.
You build rapport.
You build a rapport with somebody, right? Right. You don't insult them. It's not a good situation, because many times a woman might call up with a domestic dispute. They show up and they try to take the guy away, and the woman is going after the cops because of the whole codependency and the abusive relationship. And that's a whole other show we could do on that, and how people should get out of that. But the basic bottom line is that everybody should be happy in life, and everybody should, follow their dreams and their goals. And something that I wrote 40 years ago, because I had a near-death experience. I was almost killed in a head-on collision. And right before I thought I was going to die, I was a passenger. I had gone up to Maine to a karate training camp for a week. That was a week of hell, but it was the best week of my life, because we were tortured for a week. But I realized after that week, you can do anything you want when you put your mind to it. On the way back, we almost had this head-on collision. So I said to myself, God, if you're going to kill me, why couldn't you have done it on the way up? That's what I thought to myself, because it would have saved me the week of torture. So when I got home, I wrote my philosophy of life, which I've been living for the last 40 years. This is 1979. It goes like this: don't be afraid to reach for a goal beyond your grasp. The power and limitations of the human mind and soul have never been defined. For a person without a goal or direction in life does not anticipate tomorrow, but drifts with the tides of time. So that's what I wrote.
That's lovely, Dr. Mike.
Thanks. And I've been living it for 40 years, but so many people are just afraid to get out of their, their safety zone. And
right. They put up their boundaries. Exactly. Hey, Dr. Mike, we're just about out of time for our episode today. We're going to need to get you back on our show for sure. Okay. I hear a lot of topics there that I would love to pick your brain about. Sure. I would love to hear your opinion on some interesting subjects, and I'm sure we would be able to make many shows out of our quests there. Okay. I used to be a science teacher too.
You weren't? Coincidence? Ted would say no, not coincidence. One last sentence I'd like to just end with, because I came up with this a few years ago. Yeah. And the only reason why people don't reach their full potential in health potential, are excesses and deficiencies. That's it. And I challenge anybody to say anything else that's not an excess or a deficiency. So we should try to increase our deficiencies and decrease our excesses and get in that Goldilocks zone. Yes. The cyclical, get in touch with the cycles of nature, right, Dr. Mike? Yes. Well, actually, it's good you bring that up, because you should try to get into as many different ecosystems as possible, because we have about 100 trillion microorganisms in us and on us, about 2 to 5 pounds, depending who you read. And when you go to different ecosystems, you take into your body different microorganisms from different ecosystems. We should have about 2,500 different species in our bodies and on us to stay healthy in symbiosis. And that could be a topic for another show. Hey, Dr. Mike, where can our listeners tune into you? Where can our listeners find you? Can you please give us your website? It'll also be in our show notes. Yes, it's Dr. Evangel, It's DR then EV then angel.com. And just remember TV evangelist without the ist. And I have all my information there. And then I also have a whole other business which uses tourmaline infused products that helps accelerate the healing process of the human body. It works on mitochondrial dysfunction. That's a whole other company called FIR Industries. And that's tourmahealth.com, TOURMA health.com. And also on Roku, download Streaming Health TV channel and watch my show called The Super Mike Show, America's Holistic Hero, which I did not come up with that name.
Very good. Okay. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Mike.
Thank you so much, Aeriol. It's a pleasure.
And I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. And until next time, happy healing.